So I'd just like to focus on a couple of things. First of all, I know that there are many faces here that have been involved in the network for a number of years. But for some members that are perhaps a little bit newer to the network, we thought it would be appropriate to just give a little bit of an overview about what is a strategic initiative from the network. And how are these initiatives identified? And then I'd like to touch a little bit on the progress of these initiatives from the international network perspective, give a sense of what's happening at the regions, and a little bit at the site level, the model forest level, a few reflections, lessons learned over the past 3 years, and a look into the future, which will be a segue into our session later on this morning in our working groups. So what is a strategic initiative? Well, I think really in a very general and broad sense, we could say that it's a program of work that's undertaken by the network that is independent of any one model forest. It's usually and has generally been identified as a common theme that we are pursuing, perhaps something like ecosystems, goods, and services. Or it could also be focused on more of a biogeographic region, such as the circumboreal. And what would be some of the rationale or benefits for pursuing some of these initiatives? Well, I think we can break it out into two parts, and the first part is looking at it as a strategy. We can gain a lot from doing things as a group, and we know that's one of our principles of a model forest. And so examining ideas at various issues and issues at various scales, at a site level, at a regional level, at an international level, developing collaborative arrangements with other organizations to strengthen things. These are numerous reasons why we are pursuing strategic initiatives. So in this process of the strategic initiatives, hails back to 2008 at the Global Forum in Hinton. And it was at this point that there was some reflection made by the members and by the Secretariat to try and focus our work and address specific themes: climate change, ecosystems, goods and services, community sustainability, knowledge sharing. And a last one there is the Circumboreal Initiative, and I have a little asterisk beside that. I did consult with my, I looked at the minutes of and the outputs from that last Global Forum, and then consulted with a colleague of mine, Brian Bennell, who's a bit of a model forest historian in himself, and he confirmed to me that in fact the Circumboreal Initiative hails back to an initial discussion in identification of a common theme from boreal countries from the Global Forum in 2005 in Costa Rica. So you can see these are issues that were identified by the membership through our Global Forum process. And I think what I want to share now is a little bit about what's happened with the network and the initiatives. What the uptake and engagement has been like. And what we've done here is a little bit of a graph that shows the different strategic initiatives over the different regions. And I think from a first glance, what we can see here is that there's lots of bars in all the different regions, which is a good sign. That's an indication that we have uptake and interest and activities occurring virtually across the network. The Mediterranean network, which is a new network, young, with a few model forests right now, and probably one of the reasons why there isn't 4 bars there or 3 bars there. And also, as Brian said earlier, this information is based on part of the surveys that we send out to the network, over 50 model forests in 20 countries. And we do miss information, and we know people are busy and that not all information is sent to us. So the caveat is that there's a lot of things here that we've perhaps missed, But in a general sense, if we look across the network, we can see that we have pretty strong engagement in all the strategic initiatives in all of the regions. So just a little bit of a refresher about some of these strategic initiatives, and I'll go through them. The climate change initiative is, when it was identified, it had a focus on mitigation of and adaptation to climate change. And the idea was that model forests would be used as a platform for research, as we say here, studies, strategies adapting community adaptation, and a look at and using them as a tool for monitoring over the long term. From the Secretariat's perspective, in terms of activities, we worked on putting together a discussion paper on forest carbon and forest communities, some joint concept work in research on RED methodologies. We pursued several partners, QSO VSO, the National Forest Program Facility, and invested throughout the regions in a series of scholarships and other courses. And last but not least, more of a recent effort would be that we're in the process of assembling an overview of available GIS information and other data for each model forest country that we'll be pursuing RED Plus pilot projects. So something else that we have in the works that we're pursuing now. If we look at the regions, just a bit of a snapshot. Again, we haven't perhaps captured everything, but it's for me a great sign to see that there are in fact 6 bars on this graph, and that there's activities in every region. Just to highlight, in the case of Africa, recently some support for a RED Plus workshop in Kinshasa with the Democratic Republic of Congo. In Asia, they've hosted a regional workshop on forest and climate change, and have included climate change, RED, and other carbon-based methodologies in their regional work plans. So I think we can safely say that there's, from a regional perspective, many activities that are occurring. We have assembled together reports for each of the strategic initiatives, and this is an effort to acknowledge Ronnie DeCamino's efforts to merge, how he merges forests and art through his painted trees approach. And this is my approach, an attempt to merge reporting and art. And so these are, in fact, words that were taken from the model forests themselves and their reports on the activity of climate change. And I think what we can just look at it in a very general sense and say, you know what, there's all kinds of activities, and maybe together this represents some form of a network on climate change. In terms of ecosystems, goods, and services, the focus was on testing and developing tools to manage systems for ecosystems, goods, and services. So focus was on workshops and awareness raising and documentation of successes and lessons learned. We knew that there was a lot of capacity within the network on this theme. And the progress from the International Model Forest Network Secretariat, again, our focus was on first, baseline, providing some general information, a discussion paper in 2009, supporting participation again in various courses of model forest representatives, and piloting, in particular, support for piloting a project on valuation of ecosystem goods and services for an entire watershed in the Kodagu model forest, as kind of an exemplary approach to work of model forests on this theme. Again, we've got a fairly good representation across the network in terms of activities relating to ecosystem goods and services. I have little doubt that there was probably some activities in the Mediterranean region, and if not, I'm sure there will be soon. But again, you can see here that the bars indicate that there are strong activities, relatively strong activities in all the regions. In particular, a couple of focus points there, in terms of the Canadian Model Forest Network. I was interested to see that they've developed a project proposal on building rural community capacity for ecological goods and services and enhancements of mixed farms, forests, and landscapes in Canada. And again, in the Asian region, they've taken an approach to include this in their strategic planning as a priority, the integration of ecosystem goods and services. And once again, an attempt at merging art and reporting. And so again, you can see some of the key words there that have come up, and it's an example in this case, 26 model forests that have indicated work on ecosystem goods and services, 5 regions. Community sustainability. The focus in this strategic initiative was to, promote sustainable development at the community level. In a very broad sense, that's really what it was about: pursuing better livelihoods, looking at mechanisms of good governance, and the social, cultural well-being of the community from a landscape perspective. The International Secretariat focused its support on the e-commerce pilot project, where we pursued some work in a discussion paper, work plans. We've collaborated with several partners, and we've made some strong strides in terms of now putting in place some resources. In the case, our work with CUSO VSO has paid off, and we have a CUSO cooperant that will be focusing specifically on this area in the Latin American region for a pilot project specific to e-commerce. We've got databases now and compiled data of small and medium-sized enterprises and their services and their goods that will be integrated into this project. Again, from the region, we can see that we have engagement and uptake across the network, some stronger than others, but I think this is a very good indication that the strategic initiatives that were chosen a few years back continue to be important and pursued by the network throughout all regions. And once again, the efforts with art and reporting, 29 model forests representing every region: Africa, Asia, Canada, Eastern Europe, Russia, and Ibero-American. And I picked out some of the highlights on this one in particular. There was research, there was capacity building, marketing, commercialization of products and services. So a wide assortment of activities focused on this strategic initiative. The strategic initiative that we have on knowledge sharing, it's based on the premise that we know that knowledge sharing is important, and that it's really about connecting those who know with those who need to know in terms of the information. And it really underlines, I think, the sixth principle key principle of a model forest of sharing knowledge, building capacity, and undertaking networking at all levels. We've also come to the conclusion that knowledge sharing it's not organic. It does take a little bit of a motor, a little bit of an engine, and what we need to really focus on is what do we need to share and how do we share it. We know there's lots of information out there, and we know that people, their time and their resources are limited. So this needs to be, I think, probably a key focus on this strategic initiative. The Secretariat has really worked on in a variety of fronts. We've pursued a couple of surveys, the systemization of experiences through our participation with the KEDLAP project, sponsored by IDRC and led by QSO VSO, and really implemented by Model Forest in many cases. We've pursued some promotional material, tried to improve our website for visibility and accessibility, various languages, put together some of the publications, one that you've probably seen, and if not, we have still some outside in the front, I think, and that's our latest publication on a global approach to ecosystem sustainability. And even things such as our posters that we put together that are around outside that demonstrate who is doing different strategic initiatives out in various parts of the network. Again, we can see through our survey results that knowledge sharing active and well in virtually all the regions, and again the Mediterranean, perhaps just because of its youthfulness and maybe missing in some of the information gathering, but we have, I think, a strong representation of how important this is throughout the network. And once again, the art combination package with the reporting. There was a lot of work on capturing lessons learned, and numerous other activities I think we can see throughout their websites and such. The Circumboreal Initiative, as I mentioned, came out of discussions back in 2005, and I thought it was important just to touch on a little bit about the Boreal region a bit as an ecosystem, and recognizing that it represents about 33% or a third of the world's forests. In particular in Canada and Russia, these are significant portions of our landscapes. And as well, I think it's important probably to note that within the network itself, within the International Model Forest Network, close to half of the forested landscapes are in fact boreal. Of course, Canada's contribution to that number is significant, but Russia and Sweden as well play a role in that. And really, this initiative is to provide an opportunity to increase the ability of participating countries to address national and international interests and exchanges and challenges to achieving sustainable forest management in the Boreal region. It provides a platform for conducting research and testing responses to changing conditions in the boreal forests, and practical ways to further collaborate. And lastly, I think it's also an opportunity to address issues and mechanisms for contributing to policy-making decisions. From the International Secretariat perspective, a concept note was developed. We've completed 2 years of project funding that has assisted collaboration of research between and amongst model forests in Canada and other boreal organizations, or other organizations in boreal regions. We have, I think, a very good example of learning from our elders. That's Prince Albert and Wilhelmina model forests. Both those model forests are here. I know Susan Carr was involved in that one, and some, I think, very good mileage for the investments that were made specific to this this type of research. And I think, from what I understand, that the future programming will be a focus on climate change, adaptive capacity, and looking at that theme within the boreal regions. I'd like to close off with a couple of reflections and observations. And I think what we can see by looking at the various reports from the Secretariat, from the regions, and from the artwork, which was derived from the reports at the site level, is that we have the appropriate size and structure within our network. the large-scale and multi-stakeholder governance of model forests allow the International Model Forest Network to be well-positioned as a very good delivery platform for learning and for strategic initiatives in general. It's a real hub. In terms of approach and readiness, I really think that model forests represent a proven approach for effective governance, where local stakeholders can be mobilized quite quickly in terms of interacting, working together towards a specific and common goal. And lastly, I think we need to acknowledge that there are differences that exist as we pursue strategic initiatives, recognizing that some strategic initiatives and the activities within, such as ecosystem goods and services or community sustainability, are largely shaped by national and subnational influences. And that might be through legislation or just the cultural or local context of economies. And as such, the importance of networking, of sharing these things through whether it's a knowledge sharing capacity, will greater influence our work as a network and provide perhaps a common message as we move forward into international arenas and trying to influence policy. And lastly, a segue into our sessions that we'll be starting in a few minutes. We're looking forward to opportunities in the future and directions as we pursue our strategic initiatives. And so I think what I want to highlight here is that, in essence, what we're moving into in the next couple of hours is essentially a planning session. And it is one where we hope to reaffirm the work that we've done in strategic initiatives and focus, maybe perhaps try and focus a little bit more on themes from a secretariat perspective, and I think from a regional secretariat perspective, if we can have what we call actionable information and guidance, a little bit more about who is doing what and what are we doing and when are we doing it, provides us with a little bit more of an ability to plan and to implement our strategic initiatives a little bit better. And lastly, as I mentioned in the previous slide as well, we know that there's a lot of work that's being done on these strategic initiatives at the model forest level. And any way that we can help facilitate moving this up to provide more of a regional presence or an international presence and strengthen the networking aspect of these initiatives, I think will be key as we move forward. Thank you.